It's The Log. I'm Charles Purcell. Well, I suppose you want to hear my thoughts on impeachment. Do you? Show of hands? On days like this, I'm hyper aware of listeners from the future. Because, after all, this is a podcast. It goes out into the world, into the wires and the tubes of the internet. And where it lands is just anybody's guess. I don't know. I don't know how far it goes into the future. I don't know how long this archive remains accessible. So right now, if you're in the future, I'm talking to you on January 14th. Is that right? Yeah. Check my calendar. January 14th, 2021. From a place that used to be known as the United States of America. And yesterday at 4:36 p.m. Eastern, the gavel came down and the Orange Menace was impeached for the second time. The only U.S. president with that dubious distinction. In case you're wondering, the Orange Menace is what I called him because I knew, even in my time, not to ever utter the name. Of course, in your time, in the future, I'm guessing, I'm almost certain that no one wants to utter that name. It would be the T word. You would punish children for saying the name aloud, I'm guessing, in the future. So, with that said, hey, Georgia, one more favor to ask you. I know you've done a lot for us, Georgia. But could you seat those two new senators ASAP? Just like right away, please? It's my understanding, if I've got this right, your vote count becomes official as of tomorrow, Friday, January 15th. Is that right? And you can officially certify your election, and we can seat these two guys? Could you do it? Because I'm thinking that at this time tomorrow, Chuck Schumer could be the Senate leader. Let's get this trial going. This was one of the biggest lies yesterday, of all the many lies the Republicans were spewing yesterday. It's impossible to have a Senate trial. That's why we shouldn't impeach him. Well, no, it's not impossible to have a Senate trial. If Turtle Man wanted to do it, he could do it. All it takes is Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell to have a little Skype call and say, you know what, let's call an emergency session right now, today. That's all they have to do. So no, it's not impossible. Not in the least. But you kept saying that it was, and it's simply not. Now, Mitch McConnell has said he won't do it before inauguration. He said the earliest he'll do it is 1 p.m. on January 20th, 1 hour after Joseph Robinette Biden is inaugurated as the 46th President of the United States. But that's one person. That's one man. That's one turtle. There's nothing written in stone. There's no law that says you can't do this right away. So, Georgia, Secretary of State Raffensperger, you've won our hearts, with your response to the Orange Menace on that phone call. By the way, just so you know, and I'm sure you know this, Raffensperger is still a tool for a lot of reasons. He just, he stood up to that phone call, so we like him for that. So Raffensperger, did the Orange Menace raise your ire enough? Are you mad enough at him to do this one last thing for us? Could you? Could you do us a solid, as the kids say? Certify your election, send those guys up to Washington, and let's get this thing going with Senate leader Chuck Schumer. Of course, now we're relying on Chuck Schumer to do the right thing. When has that ever happened? But Chuck, come on, man. We can have this trial in 1 day. A 1-day impeachment trial. No problem. You had a 1-day impeachment. We don't need witnesses. 330 million people saw it happen live. We all are perfectly aware of the whole setup, the months and months of lies before, during, and after the election. that set this whole thing up. The Orange Menace named the date, sent out the invitations, had a big old pep rally, said go march, go fight. There's no need for a trial. Have a one-day trial. Opening statements, closing statements, vote, boom, gone. There you go. That's all there is to it. You literally, I'm not even making a joke right now. All right? This is 100% completely serious. You can have an impeachment trial in one day. Opening statements, closing statements, vote, done. Didn't have witnesses in the last trial. So there you go. Speaking of Mitch McConnell, there's a lot being made about his reported comment to associates that he himself might vote for impeachment, that he'd like to see the Orange Menace gone. And that makes perfect sense to me. And no, Mitch McConnell hasn't suddenly found a heart. He's not the Grinch whose heart grew 3 sizes bigger one day. No, he's just done with the Orange Menace. He's served his purpose. You must go now. And Mitch McConnell knows, for all the things I say about the guy, I never said he wasn't smart. He is smart. In fact, he's a fucking evil genius. He knows exactly what he's doing all the time. And he knows that he wants the Orange Menace gone, disappeared. And the best way to do that is to impeach his ass. And Mitch and I agree, for the good of the nation, and it happens to be for the good of the Republicans too. Normally I don't wish for something that's for the good of the Republicans. But yeah, it's absolutely good for that party if the Orange Menace is barred from ever running for office again. Because for me, this is a huge bottom line issue. This is right there. This is right front and center. His ability to run for president in 2024 must be taken away. He's going to announce his candidacy the day after impeachment trial, unless you take that away from him. He's going to be a candidate on day one, and he's going to use it to raise money. He's going to use it to have big rallies and to stay in the news and to stay relevant. Now, he'll try to do this if we ban him from running for office, but it won't be as effective. In fact, this is a prediction. I don't know this for sure, but my prediction is if he's banned for running again, that pretty much silences him. He'll still try, but without that in his hip pocket, without that status as presidential candidate, it doesn't fly. So we're not talking about, right now anyway, posterity, history books, what children will learn about him. Those things are important too. It's really important to convict the guy for many reasons. But the most immediate reason is this ability to run, to declare as a candidate. It changes the political landscape. It changes the media landscape for the next 4 years, for the next 8 years. Who knows? He'll still try to be an influence. He'll still try to be a kingmaker. He'll still get all involved in endorsing wild-eyed challengers in primary campaigns. My biggest concern is that for the next 4 years or longer, he remains the number one influence on every Republican in Congress. They got to get his okay. They got to kiss his ring every time they want to make a decision. We cannot have this. It's all about his ability to run. It's all about that. So what do we do? What do we do? Well, the easiest thing to do is get a quick trial. I would really love to do it literally in the next couple days with the help of Secretary Raffensperger in Georgia. I think that's the way to go. Short of that, if the trial has to wait until after inauguration, I still say get it done. I mean, quickly, literally a day or two. Just do it and convict. Of course, we got to rely on a few Republicans. That's a long shot. Now, that brings us to the 14th Amendment, which I've seen different reports on. There was an article in the Washington Post. John Nichols had an article. Here, this is from Nichols. Focusing on the 14th Amendment is relevant. As Pulitzer Prize-winning historian Eric Foner reminds us, the House and Senate could, with a simple majority vote, censure the Orange Menace for inciting insurrection, and with the approval of a President Joe Biden, effectively bar Trump from running again for the presidency. This can be invoked against anyone who has ever taken an oath to support the Constitution, including the president. It's much simpler than impeachment. It is not a judicial proceeding. It's a political proceeding. It doesn't involve lawyers or trials. It is simply about qualification for office. You could have one afternoon of debate and a vote. If you can just invoke the 14th Amendment, ban him from running for office again with a simple majority vote, my God, do it. Here, let's read the language. I got my U.S. Constitution app here on my phone. Oh, it's got to update. Wait a minute, the U.S. Constitution has to update? Yeah, well, it does. I guess the App Store knows more than I do. No, the app has to update. All right, well, while we're waiting for that. Oh, there it is. Okay, that was quick. All right, 14th Amendment, Section 3. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress, or elector of president and vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States, or under any state, who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress, or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislature, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. So it does require a 2/3 vote. I think I misspoke. I think I said simple majority. Did I say that? I don't remember what I said. All right, so it's a little higher bar. I still think it certainly can be done and should be done. There again, a 2/3 vote. You're relying on some decent Republicans. We had 10 yesterday out of, I think it was 197 voted against impeachment yesterday, Republicans. Only 10 voted for. So again, no person shall be a senator or representative or this or that or pretty much anybody. No person shall serve the United States in any way who has engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. That applies to the Orange Menace. It applies to the 197 Republicans yesterday who gave aid and comfort to the Orange Menace. It certainly applies to Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley and the other half a dozen senators who, after last week's invasion, voted in support of those very invaders when they voted to deny Joe Biden his electoral votes. Yeah, we need to do a clean sweep here. Speaking of the Republicans, my God, I've been saying for a long time, if you have an R next to your name, just shame on you. Just shame on you. For the last, well, I would say since Reagan. But if it took you a few years, if it took you even 10 years to figure out how damn evil this thing was, I'll give you all the slack in the world. I'll give you 20 years. If you hadn't figured this out by the 2000 election at least, I'll give you a 20-year slack. But now for the most recent 20, I'm not going to give you that same slack. If you haven't figured out that having an R next to your name is unacceptable. You know, every damn Republican, even the ones who voted with us, even they still continue to say, well, I voted for him. I agreed with all the policy initiatives. Sending thugs to murder Democrats and to murder your vice president, is that the new bar? Like, anything short of that is okay? For 40 years, for 20 years, for the last 4 years, you've been fine with tax cuts for billionaires. You've been fine with completely turning your back on the poor and the suffering. You've been fine with tens of thousands of people dying every year for lack of health coverage. You've been fine with a Middle East policy that's based on evangelical end-of-world prophecies, backing the Israeli apartheid state and the occupation of the Palestinians. You've been fine with all that. You've been fine with the border policies, separating families, pulling screaming children out of their mother's arms, never to be seen again. You're fine with all of that. You're fine with the scores of unqualified judges named to the federal judiciary. Not my word. No, that's the word of the American Bar Association. Unqualified right-wing ideologues filling the federal judiciary. Fine with that. You're fine with that. But, lining up Democrats for a mass execution, hanging Mike Pence by the neck up on your homemade gallows, right out there in a public park for everybody to gather around and watch. No, you draw the line there. Oh, Republicans. The courage. The moral courage. So you're not okay with a violent overthrow, with literal civil war. That's where you draw the line. Well, good for you. Wow, we should all just thank you. You're so brave. You're so brave. The 10 of you. The 10 out of 200 or whatever it is. Crazy. And some of you, it's now becoming, I don't know, it's still speculation, but it's looking awfully clear that a handful of you were in on it, in on the planning. You knew exactly what was going down. People with R next to your name. The last time you and I spoke about this, I thought I had a scoop. Things happen fast here. Because on last Sunday, I heard Casey Hunt, remember I mentioned this, that she had reported that Republicans in the House feared for their safety and the safety of their families if they didn't back the Orange Menace in his little soft coup in the joint session on January 6th, led by Cruz and Hawley. So what was it, 140 Republican House members voted to object to Biden's electoral votes? And of those 140, according to Casey Hunt, she didn't say how many, some of them, all of them, most of them, I don't know, received threats. And many wanted to vote to accept Biden's votes. They wanted to do the right thing, but they voted with Cruz, Hawley, and the Orange Menace because they feared for their safety. Now, she mentioned this just very quickly on one of the Sunday programs, and then I mentioned it when I spoke with you, and I hadn't heard one other single reporter talk about this. Again, I thought I had a little scoop. It was just me and Casey. I heard her say it. I heard no one else repeat it. I shared it with you, and I was all very proud of myself. Oh, look at that. And now, in the couple of days since then, now it's the big story. Everybody's talking about it. Because while the soft coup was happening inside, the hard coup was breaking in, trying to break down the door. And now, talk about threats. Now everybody's talking about it. It's right out in the open. And we're hearing the same thing about impeachment. I wanted to vote for impeachment, several Republicans have said to their colleagues. I really wanted to vote for impeachment, but I can't. I couldn't do it. I fear for my safety. I fear for the safety of my family. They're getting threats, credible, real threats, via email, text, messages. We know where you live, pictures of their houses, pictures of their families, pictures of their wives and kids and husbands. And the now very well documented, no doubt about it, credible threats against state houses, against the Capitol again, against the inauguration, obviously. So, yeah, maybe these 10 Republicans, maybe they were brave. When you put it in that context, okay, thanks. Thanks for being brave. But as for the last 4 years, the last 10 years, the last 20 years, the last 40 years, I got nothing to thank you for. The repugnance, making this happen, taking us down a slow and steady path for the last 40 years. And like a damn snowball rolling down a hill, just gets bigger and more menacing with every turn. Did you watch any of this yesterday? Did you watch the debate? The floor speeches? Man, I got downright depressed yesterday. A handful of the Democrats had a handful of decent things to say, but mostly it was just a lot of posturing. It was a lot of people who loved the sound of their own voices. This really just shallow, vapid, maudlin cliches. These guys, they ain't even smart. The Republicans, oh my God, they were shameless, absolutely brutal, making their false equivalences again. Murdering insurrectionists, attempting to reverse the outcome of a valid national election for president by force, and very much prepared and ready to kill to accomplish that little task. This was an invasion. They stormed the gates, they killed, and they were looking for more. They were looking to take hostages, they were looking to execute people, and you compare that to the looting of a Target store in Minneapolis. It was absolutely shameful yesterday what they were doing. Jim Jordan spent half of his time literally making the argument for the insurrectionists, for the invaders, making their arguments, repeating their lies. Went through the whole Pennsylvania thing again. Just the whole list, ticking them off. Of course, it was all just a pack of lies. Everybody knows it's a lie. We've always known it's a lie. So he's literally on the House floor continuing to spread the lies and to support the views of the very people who invaded the house from which he speaks. Literally blood on the floor that he's standing on. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress who shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. That applies to the Orange Menace. It applies to Jim Jordan. It applies to Josh Hawley. It applies to all 140 Republicans who voted to object in the soft coup. It certainly applies to those members of Congress who aided and abetted the invaders themselves, because there's no turning away from that. That happened. It's just a matter of finding out how many and which ones. So Congress, use the power given to you by the Constitution of the United States. Prove yourselves worthy of the positions you hold. Show the 87% of Americans who disapprove of you. Yeah, the last poll I saw, 13% approval for Congress. That's about right. That sounds about right. Why don't you show the 87% of us who disapprove of you that you really can get something done? Something damned important here. Get this impeachment done now, convict his ass, and send him into the history books. If you can't do that, invoke the 14th Amendment, ban him from running for office again, take the wheels off of his clown car. The majority of Americans want him gone. There's another lie you kept hearing yesterday. Most Americans think this is a waste of time. Most Americans don't want him impeached. No, that's just a simple lie. Every poll tells us that a growing majority, not just a majority, it's bigger every day, a growing majority of Americans want him impeached and convicted. All of his lawyers have left him. All of his donors are gone. Deutsche Bank has cut all ties. New York City has cut all ties. He is entirely alone. Everybody, the entire world is against him, except for a handful of congressional Republicans. Here we are again. A handful of people with R next to their name. I'm telling you, this has not been a legitimate political party for years. They're craven conspirators against democracy. Their power lust defines them. Their willingness to lie, to cheat, to steal is on full display. And then yesterday in the impeachment hearings, we get nothing but all these crocodile tears. Oh, we all need to come together. We need to move forward. We need to heal. Is anybody buying this? You know, there's a reason it's called truth and reconciliation. You can't have reconciliation without the truth, without repentance of wrongdoers, without justice. You can't just do a crime and then say to the victim, oh, let's move forward. Let's have reconciliation. And I'm not just talking about the legislative crime where you tried to steal an election. I'm talking about decades-long organized crime against the American people, against democracy, against decency. At long last, have you no decency? Kevin McCarthy had me just spinning yesterday. He makes this big speech about how the president was responsible for what happened, for the rioting, murderous revolutionaries who stormed the Capitol. Yes, president was responsible, says Kevin McCarthy. But I will vote against impeachment. What? How does that work? What is your... People with an R next to their name have completely lost any sense of moral direction. You can't have an R next to your name. I don't care if you're the local comptroller of your little town, or on the city council, or in the mayor's office. You may think you have the best intentions in the world. You may be just this regular schlub who gets up every day and goes to work and just tries to live a nice life. But if you got an R next to your name, you are part of a criminal organization, whether you know it or not. And if you don't know it, shame on you for being so damn dumb. It's too late. It's too late to say you didn't know. It's too late to claim that, oh, well, most Republicans are good, God-fearing people, and we don't. No, it's too late for that. There's been too much evidence from Ronald Reagan turning his back on the AIDS crisis, busting unions, tossing mentally ill Americans out into the streets by the thousands, launching this massive shift of wealth up to the 1%. And then Bush and Rumsfeld and Cheney and that crew continue the theft of American workers, launch their foreign wars of occupation, because your theft of the American worker was no longer enough. You had to go out on a grand global scale with your looting and thievery. And if it took mass killing and bombings, military invasion, occupation, torture to do it, you were fine with it. Just right on down the line. The Repugnants were fine with all of it. Now the Orange Menace comes along, and he recruits, and he inspires, and he directs an armed insurgency to break down the doors of the Capitol building where you work in order to reverse a free and fair election and to execute the Vice President of the United States and the Speaker of the House. Oh, well, okay, I guess we're not okay with that. Wow, aren't you brave? Aren't you wise? 10 of you. So they're my thoughts on the day after impeachment. Good luck to us all. I love you. I'm Charles Purcell.